There is a mystery associated with the Orion constellation found in indigenous cultures all over the world that dates back to ancient Egypt. More specifically, if one does the research, they find that the Orion Nebula tends to be the areas of focus being pointed to. For example, the Mayans of Central America described the nebula within their three hearthstones creation myth. The three would correspond to two stars at the base of Orion, Rigel and Saiph, and another Alnitek at the tip of the belt of the imagined hunter, the vertices of a nearly perfect triangle, with Orion's sword, including the Orion Nebula in the middle, seen as the smudge of smoke from copal incense in a modern myth, or in an ancient one, the literal or figurative embers of a fiery creation. Another example found by Gary David in his book titled The Orion Zone shows that the ancient Hopi ruins were also modeled after the Orion constellation specifically. In another example, the pyramid with the eye found in Ecuador in South America by Klaus Dona is several thousand years old. This pyramid also glows in the dark when hit with a black light. If one turns the pyramid over, there are 4 letters and a picture of the constellation of Orion. The 4 letters were of pre-Sanskrit writing. This means that the writing was older than the oldest writing. The 4 letters were later deciphered to mean the Son of the Creator comes. Before he passed away, John J. Harper wrote an article titled Sons of God. We read the following: "The Great Pyramid at Giza contains the secret to the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth in our cosmos, the so-called riddle of the Sphinx. This article reveals that the formula of reincarnation within the star clusters of the Orion Nebula. In fact, it is the same story of creation embodied in the design of crop circles, sacred sightstone megaliths, and the zodiac that speaks to our origins and destiny as a star-seeding civilization. Ultimately, we have rediscovered the secrets to reincarnation that were embedded in the great pyramid stones at Giza and the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They and other related sacred site structures all seek to help us recapture our roots in the stars and point us back to our home, the twin Earth, in the star nursery of the Orion Nebula." Egyptologist John Anthony West, in his book Serpent in the Sky, The High Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, looks into the riddle of the Sphinx with his symbolic insights into the Temple of Man at Luxor. In its crumbling ruins, we find carefully crafted stones harmonically calibrated to the sacred geometry of stars in our subtle energy chakra system, and thus our bones and blood are tuned to the music of the spheres by them to Orion Nebula. The Orion constellation is located in the same arm of the galaxy that our solar system is. There are some that believe that our sun actually comes from the Orion Nebula. Robert Odell published a book in 2003 titled The Orion Nebula, Where Stars Are Born. He notes that the Orion Nebula is the closest center of mass of star formation, a stellar nursery that reproduces the condition in which our sun was formed some 4.5 billion years ago. There's an article titled Water in Orion, found on the NASA.gov site by David Mullen, in which he has confirmed that water molecules now exist in the famous Orion Nebula and are still forming. This is the water that composes comets, the oceans of the Earth, and even humans may have been created in a cloud like the Orion Nebula. The Herschel Space Observatory in 2011 found molecules of oxygen deep in the heart of the Orion Nebula. While individual atoms of oxygen are known to be relatively abundant, this is the first time that molecular oxygen, 2 oxygen atoms bonded together, has been found. The lack of detection of molecular oxygen has stumped astronomers for years, but now we find oxygen in the location close to the trapezium stars, located near the center of the Orion Nebula. The human soul is a magnetic monopole, but as the Egyptians realized, our soul splits into twins, the Ka and Ba. These 2 bipolar entities, however, must be restored to integrity, wholeness, here and now in order to open the stargates to our physical immortality. This is the meaning to what Jesus commanded in the Gospel of Thomas: make the 2 one again. He was speaking to the science of soul, Kabbalah. The focus of the mystery school initiations was to cross oneself by aligning the 7 major chakras with the subtle energy grid matrix of the Earth, Sun, and galaxy, the cross of Christ. This then is the meaning to the second coming of the sons of God, Jesus, Osiris, Quetzalcoatl, and many other superstars in Era 2012. There is evidence to suggest that the knowledge the ancient Egyptians possessed about enlightenment, our energy chakra system, and its connection to the stars, was carried over into the Greco-Roman world and finally into the Vatican. A collection of ancient Egyptian religious texts from the time of the Old Kingdom. The pyramid texts are the oldest known religious texts dated to approximately 2400 to 2300 BCE. Written in Old Egyptian, they were carved on the walls of the pyramids at Saqqara during the 5th and 6th dynasties of the Old Kingdom. They provide the earliest comprehensive view of the way in which the ancient Egyptians understood the structure of the universe, the role of the gods, and the fate of human beings after death. Isis was a goddess in ancient Egyptian religious beliefs, whose worship spread throughout the Greco-Roman world. Isis was the first daughter of Geb, god of the earth, and Nut, goddess of the sky. Isis married her brother Osiris, and she conceived Horus by him. Isis was instrumental in the resurrection of Osiris when he was murdered by Seth. This myth became very important during the Greco-Roman period. The worship of Isis eventually spread throughout the Greco-Roman world, continuing until its suppression of paganism in the Christian era. The Catholic Church has what is claimed to be the oldest continuously functioning internal legal system in Western Europe, much later than Roman law, but predating evolution of modern European civil law traditions. What began with rules, canons, adopted by the apostles at the Council of Jerusalem, in the 1st century has developed into a highly complex legal system, encapsulating not just the norms of the New Testament, but some of the elements of Hebrew Old Testament, Roman, Saxon, and Celtic legal traditions. In the Roman Church, positive ecclesiastical laws, based upon their immutable divine and natural law, or changeable circumstantial and merely positive law, derive formal authority and promulgation from the office of the Pope, who as Supreme Pontiff possesses the totality of legislative, executive, and judicial power in his person. The actual subject material of the canons is not just doctrinal or moral in nature, but indeed all-encompassing of the human condition. Because of canon law, much of the early Christian texts were purposely left out of the Bible to hide the ancient knowledge that existed during these ancient times. For example, in 1945, 13 papyrus codices buried in a sealed jar were found by a local peasant near the Upper Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi. This collection of codices and Coptic bindings, called the Nag Hammadi Library, comprised of 52 mostly Gnostic tractates or treatises. The best known of these works is probably the Gospel of Thomas, of which the Nag Hammadi codices contain the only complete text. They also included 3 works belonging to the Corpus Hermeticum, which was the teaching of wisdom and enlightenment by Thoth, later known as Hermes Trismegistus. These texts discuss the nature of the divine, mind, nature, and the cosmos. Some touch upon alchemy, astrology, and related concepts. Following the Roman Emperor Constantine's religious toleration of and conversion to Christianity, he did not offer religious toleration to the Jews who practiced enlightenment and teaching of wisdom from the Kabbalah, and thus the ancient mysteries were considered heresy, and to talk about them or discuss them was punishable by death. Upon careful study of the Bible combined with other early Christian texts, it becomes easy to see why the Gospel of Thomas was left out of the Bible, as well as other early Christian texts such as the Corpus Hermeticum. For in the Gospel of Thomas we can clearly see that Jesus was teaching hermetics. For he said, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the Father's kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It's in the sea,' and the fish will precede you. Rather, the Father's kingdom is within you and is outside you. This quote is clearly aligned to the principle of correspondence, in which the axiom states, as above, so below, as below, so above. Meanwhile, having their say on what books were left in and kept out of the Bible, the Church has taught us salvation is the act of God, whereas the Book of Wisdom, also left out of the Bible, teaches us salvation is the act of wisdom. So we find throughout the Bible that the words speak truth, but that man's interjection and twisting of its words has taught us a completely different story. This assumption is also supported by another quote within the Gospel of Thomas. For Jesus said, "The Pharisees and scholars have taken the keys of knowledge and hidden them. They have not entered, nor have they allowed those who want to enter to do so." The representation of Jesus dying on the cross with his crown of thorns is to teach us how, with the proper steps of enlightenment, how we can also make the two one again and become one with the universe. The crown of thorns was not only worn by Jesus, but also by the Supreme Mother Goddess of the Tibet. The Supreme Mother Goddess of the Tibet is also seen wearing her crown of thorns, sitting underneath a caduceus. The caduceus is also another representation of the chakra system and the tree of life. When one's Sahasrara chakra opens, their crown chakra, it is said to be their crown of thorns. This is the step in which one has reached full enlightenment. This type of correspondence can be found all over the Bible. The next part of this presentation will prove to you that this ancient knowledge not only still exists in the Church, but that it has been suppressed and kept secret, contrary to the teachings of Jesus and other great teachers such as Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus, the teachers of wisdom, to keep control over the population for thousands of years. Of the imagined hunter, the vertices of a nearly perfect triangle, with Orion's sword, including the Orion Nebula, in the middle, seen as the smudge of smoke from copal incense in a modern myth, or in an ancient one, the literal or figurative embers of a fiery creation. Another example found by Gary David in his book titled The There is a mystery associated with the Orion constellation found in indigenous cultures all over the world that dates back to ancient Egypt. More specifically, if one does the research, they find that the Orion Nebula tends to be the areas of focus being pointed to. For example, the Mayans of Central America described the nebula within their three hearthstones creation myth. The three would correspond to two stars at the base of Orion, Rigel and Saiph, and another Alnitek at the tip of the belt, Orion zone, shows that the ancient Hopi ruins were also modeled after the Orion constellation specifically. In another example, the pyramid with the eye found in Ecuador in South America by Klaus Dona is several thousand years old. This pyramid also glows in the dark when hit with a black light. If one turns the pyramid over, there are 4 letters and a picture of the constellation of Orion. The 4 letters were of pre-Sanskrit writing. This means that the writing was older than the oldest writing. The 4 letters were later deciphered to mean the Son of the Creator comes. Before he passed away, John J. Harper wrote an article titled Sons of God. We read the following: The Great Pyramid at Giza